is champion!
Hey everyone, today I want to talk about Bastion, survivability, mobility, and awareness. So the current iteration of Bastion is interesting because he's shifted many times in role. Now he needs to rely much more on being unpredictable, mobile, and has to rely on his own ability to read a battlefield for his own survivability. In many ways, Bastion acts as an ambush class now rather than a hardpoint defender. He really can offer fire support, but he relies more on catching the enemy off guard, not expecting where he's going to be or that a massive amount of damage is going to hit them before they have a chance to react to it. What's interesting about Bastion now is I would relate him more to a Widowmaker sniping type of ability where you really have to catch the enemy off guard, rely on that element of surprise, and make sure that if you do get a beat on you from an enemy team, if you're starting to take enemy fire, you have to move. You can't stay where you are. You have to get out of the way, move positions, reset up, and be able to react to how the enemy is perceiving your defensive position. I think like a Widowmaker, you also have to be hyper aware of your surroundings. You know, she has the Venom Mine that will allow her to cover her flanks, but she really has to pay attention to sounds around her, be aware if the enemy team has flankers, if they're actively trying to track her down. Bastion's the same way. You have to pay attention to your flanks. You have to really listen carefully if somebody's trying to sneak up behind you and take you out. When you deploy, you have to realize what is the most obvious way that a flanker would take to get to you. If you hear footsteps, you need to be ready to turn immediately around and take out the person that's trying to track you down. Most of the classes that are capable of flanking you are going to die within a second if you can get a good burst fire on them. That being said, though, you have to be aware that if it is a Genji tracking you down, if he's going to try to get on your flank, he's going to be ready with his reflect, and if you're caught off guard and he reflects all your shots back into you, you're going to die instantly. It's really hard to avoid this if he can get close enough, but if you can react in time, you can stop firing, wait for his reflect to end, and then take him out. I think since they removed Bastion's shield, it's difficult to assess exactly where he's at as far as being on par with a burst damage potential of a Widowmaker or Hanzo, and if his lack of survivability in certain situations is worth not taking those classes. But I think as the game progresses, we're going to see whether or not professional players are capable of finding really difficult to predict spaces. I've seen in several cases where they will pick a Bastion for maybe 1 life, or they'll pick a Bastion for maybe 2 or 3 minutes of a game just to catch the enemy team off guard enough to add that extra speed bump. They're not going to pick Bastion as their main. They're not going to rely on him for a whole game, but just that surprise factor, that element of we've got to change our strategy to get around this Bastion's fire is enough to really add that extra slowdown element in certain cases. I do, however, think that Bastion's probably in this position right now where he's the spy of this game, where either you know how to play Bastion and you can make a gigantic impact on the game immediately, or you pick Bastion and you're not quite sure how to use him because his usability is in such a distant space from his actual intuitive nature. I mean, you really want to just hold down the fire button, stay where you are, and just mow things down. That's the intuitive thing you want to do with this character. So a lot of new players will try and do that, and his effective space is not in that area. He will just get taken out over and over by people that barely know what they're doing, are able to take out that element of play in his current state. What I've taken to doing to try to counteract some of these weaknesses is try to move if I get at least 2 kills. If there's any more than that, you're setting yourself up to really get countered. The enemies, after they've been killed by a Bastion, will always set down suppressing fire on that exact position if they're able to. Bastion's also a character that relies heavily on team participation. He really relies on a Reinhardt or a healer to keep him up, keep him healthy, and help support the massive amount of damage he can put out in a certain area. But this requires a team that is aware and coordinated, and not always something you're going to find, especially if you're queuing up solo. Basically, in my opinion right now, if you want to get the most you can out of Bastion, you have to be hyper aware of your surroundings. You have to be aware of the flanks around you. You have to listen out for anybody that's actively pursuing to take down your position from behind. And you really have to acknowledge that if you're going to try to get the jump on people from the front, after you get 1 or 2 kills, people are going to learn from their mistakes and they're going to lay fire down on you the next time they come around. So you need to shift positions, maybe even a foot or two to the right or the left, just enough to get you buy you that extra second to finish off an enemy quickly. So if you've been frustrated with Bastion survivability in the past, maybe give them another shot, try some of these tips, and good luck out there, guys.